Yeah, my name is Brian Puls. I was overseas the last 10 years. I was teaching in international schools. And yeah, this is my experience. I want to share what teaching was like, what the schools were like, what my students were like, and like what my life was like overseas. So I just wanted to say that all the photos in the presentation I took, there's none that are from anywhere else. So that was part of the fun of this, was digging through all my old photos from the last 10 years and just kind of going through and just kind of processing everything again. So um, these are from the three countries that I was in. This was in Bangladesh, pretty crazy place. This was in Kuwait. That was my first post, and then Indonesia was this one. All right, let's see here. Let's get this clicker going. Clicker is not going. There we go. Okay. So the first country, like I said, was in Kuwait City. Some of you might know this from the 90s, Desert Storm, I'm going to guess. So there were still remnants of Desert Storm in not in the city necessarily, but in the desert when I was there. And you could see some of that. And then I moved to Bangladesh, which is next to, it's kind of squished in between India, Myanmar, south of Nepal, and went to worked at International School Dhaka. Then the third place was in Jakarta, Indonesia, where I worked at Jakarta Intercultural School. So Jakarta is right here on the island of Java. You probably heard coffees, that referenced, in terms of coffee. So Sumatra is another island in Indonesia where a lot of coffee is grown. So Java, same thing. And Jakarta is a big city on the island of Java. Yeah, so to give you a time frame here, let's see. I spent 4 years teaching in North Carolina first. So I graduated from Alpena High School, went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and then I was trying to get a job anywhere really in the US. I didn't know about international schools, and applied to all these schools in all over the US and finally got a job in North Carolina. And talked to somebody in my school who had worked overseas, and he was kind of advocating this overseas gig to anyone who would listen. And everybody kind of thought he was crazy, and I listened to him and decided to take a risk and go for it. So my first post was in Kuwait City at this beautiful blue school here. We used to call it the blue tissue box because it kind of stood out over everything that was just kind of painted white in the city. But it was a nice view. This is a view from the apartment complex where the teachers lived, kind of looking out over the city there. And then I moved to Dhaka, Bangladesh for 2 years. That was quite a big change. And decided after 2 years, it was time to move again to Indonesia, where I spent the last 5 years. That was by far, I think, the best experience that I had overseas. Let's see if I can get this to play. So this is the view from my apartment. This is during the call to prayer. Islam is the primary religion in Indonesia, in all three countries I was in. And you can see just a lot of surrounding residential buildings. This is the hospital back here, and the school right here. So we live right across from the school. A lot of construction going on in this area. This is now a building right now. I know they're building a apartment complex there. This was after a rainstorm, I think. So this is a building all the teachers lived in. We all had pretty big apartments in that building. So I'll show you some more of that later on. All right, now we get to some populations and density here to give you an idea of what we're dealing with in terms of people, in terms of how crowded these places are. So Alpena, as we know, about 10,000 people in the city, 1,247 per square mile. Not too crowded. New York City, quite a bit more, 20.1 million, 29,000 per square mile. Kuwait, dropped down a little bit to 4.8 million, 9,000 per square mile. So pretty low density overall. But then we get to these two mega cities, Dhaka and Jakarta. So to give you the idea, Dhaka, 23.4 million, but 87,000 per square mile. So pretty much a triple or quadruple from New York City. So that was pretty wild. In some places, it was incredibly crowded. And then Jakarta, with the metro population, 32.6 million, with 37,000 density. So that's about what it felt like, I would say. I think those are pretty accurate. But that kind of gives you an idea of the locations I was living and how that compares to what we're familiar with. So to go over some of my motivations for being overseas, I when I was in North Carolina, I was, fairly happy with my job overall, but I just knew that there was a lot more out there, and I wanted to move somewhere different. I was thinking maybe go to Alaska, maybe go to California, just somewhere very new, and then this talked to this guy that taught overseas, like I said, and he kind of convinced me to do this. But I just wanted to do something different. It wasn't like, oh, I want to go travel, I want to see the world. It was like, this is really different. This is really new. This sounds interesting. I'm going to try this out. So that was the first thing, is just to do something new and different. But along with that came adventure and travel. So I think that's one of my values as a person, is needing some adventure. And this was a great way to do that. So travel is just kind of a byproduct of that. It was just something that I was able to do alongside the teaching. And of course, money is also kind of a thing there too. So I wasn't saving a whole lot as a teacher in North Carolina. I saved as much as I could. I did okay, but overseas, the money is much better in most cases. You can save a lot more. A lot of schools will pay less than the US sometimes, but because of the cost of living, the really low cost of living in a lot of these places, you can save. I was sending home 75% of my salary in Indonesia, just, to give you an idea. So
housing for you?
Yep, all that is provided. Yep. I'll get to that, Denny. I'm just kidding.
You mentioned food. It was a big picture.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's something new and different, I'll get to the food eventually, Wendy, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, this was a dream of mine though, was to ride bikes. So that was a big one for me, was to get out and venture. That was the first trip I did outside of Kuwait. Kuwait was the first country I traveled to at all outside of the US, unless you count Canada, which I don't really. I love Canada, but so I went to Kuwait, and then the first trip, I think it was Christmas, I went to Thailand and rented a bike and just went, So that was one of my favorite things to do there. Yeah.
Thinking right away of language barrier. So how in the world did you converse? Or was this an
Yeah, I'll get to that too. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. That's all right. It's a good question. Good question. So to find this job, I'll go over this quickly, but to find this job, well, you have to understand the school year is the same as the US. So it goes from like mid-August to, early June or so. It's about the same. So recruiting and finding a job is pretty much the same. That means that students could theoretically go to school in the US and then switch to, wherever it is, Ethiopia, without an issue. They're not going to have too much of an adjustment issue with that, in terms of the what they're being taught and what the school year layout is. The recruiting for overseas is pretty early. So if you're going to start in August 2025, this year, recruiting started back in September of this year. So it starts very early, or sorry, last year, I should say, 2024. So it starts really early and it goes pretty late. So primarily it goes till about March, and then you can get a job all the way up to July. So it's all pretty much online recruiting, as you would imagine. there's some job fairs that I've been to. I got my jobs in Bangladesh and Indonesia in Thailand. I went to Bangkok, Thailand, to a really big job fair there and talked to a lot of schools, did a lot of interviews, and eventually got those jobs. So that's how the recruiting works. It's pretty easy if you have a teaching certificate. You can easily get onto these sites and find a job. You know, you can find one in a week, you know. So if you know anyone, if you have any relatives that want to teach overseas or interested, you can talk to me as well if you want to. And I'll be happy to recommend sites and things like that to use. Sometimes it's just one interview and they offer you a position. Sometimes it's three, something like that. Like they might want you to talk to the principal, curriculum coordinator, and, you know, maybe the head of the school, you know. So they some of them do more, some of them it's not as much.
So they're at the recruiting fair.
Yes, yeah. So they usually send their principal, maybe the head of school, like Indonesia, they sent head of school, assistant head, and the principals for the levels that they're recruiting for, middle school, high school, elementary. So they had a big crew there. So some of them take it more seriously. There's obviously others that are just really low quality schools that you just don't want to be at, you know, like they're not going to treat you well. They're not going to pay you on time. They're just going to dodge the rules, you know, as much as they can. So you just have to try to figure out what you know, who's telling the truth. And, you know, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do that though, I think, you know. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a good question. The school takes care of all that. So like when I went to Kuwait, I was so stressed that first year trying to get all my paperwork in, everything to the, you know, to get it, I don't know, apostilled, I think, like get stamps on it and everything and get it approved. And then I think I didn't finish it. And they ended up going anyway and taught, you know, the first semester. And then they sent me to Dubai to get my visa work done. You know, it's like, well, they finished that. So they take care of all of it. You don't have to worry about any of it, you know. Benefits of teaching overseas. So these are a few benefits that I saw during my time. Obviously the cultural experience and travel is a huge one. You have no choice but to be immersed in whatever culture you're in, whatever place you're in. There's going to be something new every day. The school does pay for yearly flights to and from home. So I actually just put in Alpena as my place of residence, and they scheduled flights to Alpena for the summer and then back to Indonesia for, so every school provides the flights pretty much. And that's one a year. So to go back in the summer and come back for the next year. You do get full benefits and housing. So they pay for really good health insurance usually. And either a housing stipend, so they give you money for housing, or just provide you with an apartment, a house, whatever it is. It just depends on the situation, the country, the cost of living. There is also, I mentioned the savings, but also a US tax exemption. So if you make, I think it's around 120,000 right now. If you make under 120,000 right now overseas, then you don't need to pay US income tax. So that was a huge benefit. Just save it all, you know. Kind of makes me wonder, yeah, like why am I back here, you know? I mean, there's plenty of elements of that, right? It's like always, that's something I'll talk about later. It's like always, should I stay? Should I leave? You know, it's like always that line of thinking, because there's so many things that are good with teaching overseas, but so many things that I miss about being in the US, you know.
So you don't pay any taxes over there?
Sometimes you have to file, but you don't. No. Yeah.
Well, you say if you stay, you continue on, but do they say after 5 years, all that goes away because you're now like a resident of it?
No, there's none of that. You don't become a resident. No, you're pretty much always a foreigner, you know. I mean, I know people that, like in Indonesia, it was a great school, and people stayed for 20, 25 years, started a family there, you know, married someone local, and then had kids, but to me, they're still foreign, you know? It's like, I don't know if personally, I don't know if I would ever feel home, you know, doing that, you know? Yeah,
They all.
I'll get to that too. Yeah, I have slides on that. Yeah. So student motivation. This is another big one. I kind of depending on the school you're at, but like I'd say the more international the schools were, the more that you had students from, you know, embassies and different places and different countries as well. You can see just the kind of the cultural diversity of this group here. That you just had better motivation than, you know, the students had more motivation than they have in America in general. And so that just made it more fun. It made it easier, less stress. I mean, yeah, there's so many benefits to that. Yeah.
Interpreters.
I'll get to that too. Yeah, I didn't have to learn any other language. It's all in English. You did have students coming in, say if, you know, someone came in from Korea, you know, uh, they could be really low level in their English, but then they'd have someone, a teacher from the school helping them in their classes, you know, with translating and things like that. So sometimes they might be sitting in the class, sometimes they might be going to a separate class to take the language lessons. But usually in my experience, like kids that came, especially from places like Korea, they would come in knowing like no English or very little English. And within a year of really hard work, 2 years, they'd surpass everybody else, you know, because they work so hard. You know, the expectations from their family are so high that they pass everybody. Then you know, they figure it out, you know.
But what you taught, or did you cover all subjects?
I'll get to that too. Yeah, it's a good question. So red tape, yeah, I said less red tape. Like in the US, we were dealing with a lot of, you know, state testing and things like that just teachers really don't like. I don't know any teachers that like state testing. And so there's just none of that. There was no one looking over your shoulder all the time to make sure you're, you know, it was just pretty, there's no micromanaging in terms of what you're teaching and how you're teaching it for the most part. So that felt really freeing to teach like that. All right, so the students. So I'm just going to go in the 3 schools I was at and kind of go over some of the differences between the students that I taught. In Kuwait, they were primarily Kuwaiti students. I'd say 95% were Kuwaiti students. This was a school for usually local kids. They came in with good English skills. The only Western kids that you would have at this school would be students of teachers that are working there. So if you were to go work at these schools and you have children, they'd be able to attend the school for free in most cases, unless you have like 3 or 4 kids. So they'd pay for maybe the first 2 kids to go there. So you would have a couple Western kids in your classes, but primarily Kuwaiti kids. So in Kuwait, there is a lot of oil, as we know, and Kuwaitis get paid by the government just for living in Kuwait and being Kuwaiti. I don't know how true it was, but I think it was my principal or one of the principals at the school had said that the average Kuwaiti earns something around $1 million from the government. And so it was just this is per year. So this is, you just had people that were incredibly rich and just fancy cars all over the place. It was kind of like you would imagine. I mean, the infrastructure wasn't great there, but there was definitely a lot of money there. So there was some element of entitlement from the kids. There were quite a few behavior issues. When I came from North Carolina, I was dealing with a lot of behavior issues in North Carolina, and it kind of carried over into Kuwait. Even though I had all this other stuff, all these other good things happening, lots of adventure, new experiences, but for the most part, the student experience was similar. You know, I had to be pretty direct with the kids. So in terms of, yeah, I think there was just a lot of the kids seemed a little bit spoiled. They were brought up by household help. So a lot of these families would have probably just as many household helpers, like people doing yard work, gardening, cooking, taking care of the kids. They'd have someone for each of these duties, and maybe just as many of these helpers as they have family members.
So they all foreigners.
Yes, so they'd become coming from Sri Lanka, from India, from Indonesia, from uh, all these other countries, Philippines, right? So that was the interesting part about Kuwait as well. One of them was that you got all this influence of other countries coming in. So in my opinion, the food was the best in in Kuwait because you had just everything. Like I had Ethiopian around the corner, I had Thai, I had great Thai, I had great Vietnamese, you know, like everything. So I missed the food the most from there. But yeah, there was all the household help was foreign. So I think only 1/3 of the country is Kuwaiti. 2/3 is people from other countries working there.
Waiting.
Some of them do. I think depending on their education and what they do, they get more money from the government. So if they have more education, more experience, I think more kids, you get more money. So, but I do know people that were at one time married, two women that were at one time married to Kuwaiti men, and they gain citizenship and still get benefits from the government that way. So I think that was the only way you could really kind of get into that system, you know. But they're looking at now even taking that away, you know. So yeah, it's interesting.
Private business?
In Kuwait, it was primarily like if you're an expat, you're either a teacher, a diplomat, or military. You know, I don't know if I met many other people doing anything else. But it was different every country, you know. I would say, like I mentioned, they had a lot of energy. They were pretty loud. I think the Arabic culture is fairly loud, and they don't. They like to save face, so they would lie about things, even if they're on camera doing it. They lie about it to the last second, you know, and just to save face, and so that was really frustrating. But at the same time, they were also pretty relational kids. So, um, and then I did 3 years in Kuwait, and I was kind of figuring out what this whole international life was like. I think I expected to stay 2 or 3 years overseas, and then come back to the U.S. and continue teaching in the U.S. But as I stayed overseas, I learned that there's better schools. There's, you know, you can kind of work your way up this ladder. And I knew that I could do better than where I was at in Kuwait. You know, I was teaching, I didn't get to that yet, but I taught middle school science and math. So 5th through 9th grade was with the grades that I taught. And I knew that with those subjects, science and math, that I could go, you know, and being a single male teacher from the US, that I could go pretty much anywhere I wanted to, as long as I had my ducks in a row, interviewed well, you know, that kind of thing. So I decided to leave Kuwait and found a job in Bangladesh. So this was quite a different place to be. I think I had traveled. I hadn't been to this area of the world yet, like India. I hadn't traveled there yet. I think I had traveled to Ethiopia, and that was a pretty wild experience, but it didn't really prepare me for Dhaka. It was quite a different experience. Just a lot more poverty, it's a lot dirtier, just a lot more going on around you. So it took a while. It took maybe a few weeks of culture shock of just kind of adjusting to, oh my gosh, I'm actually living here for 2 years, you know. So that's usually what the contracts are, is 2 years, and then you can decide every year if you want to stay or go somewhere else. So in Dhaka, most of the students were from local business and government families. So people that own businesses, they were able to pay the fees to go to the school. So in a lot of these schools, you can either go send your kids to the local schools, which they would learn in the local language in Bangladesh, Bengali, in Kuwait, Arabic, in Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesian. And that's great. You can get a local education. It's free a lot of the time, similar to the US, right? And you can go that route. But you can also send them, if you have the money, you can send them to international schools. So that's the schools that I was at. So a lot of the fees to get into these schools were quite high. Like in Indonesia, I remember it was around 30,000 a year to send your kid to middle school every year. So 30 to 35,000. And that's what these families were paying. So you're getting the wealthiest families in these countries. Or it would be like government families, like if you worked at the US Embassy and you had kids, the embassy would pay for your kids to go to one of these top schools in these countries. So primarily in Bangladesh, it was Bengali students, but we did have some foreign kids here and there. I'd say we were probably like the second. It's kind of like every country has like or every city has like their top school, like the American school of wherever, and then they have all these kind of lower tier schools, you know, and then these kind of bottom tier schools. So this was kind of that middle tier. Like there was an American school, American International School, Dhaka was above us, and they got all the embassy kids, you know, like we got a lot more local kids. And it had a different feel because of that. I think it was fine. I found the kids to be really relational and empowered in Bangladesh. So I came into the classroom kind of, you know, after 8 years or 7 years of discipline and like, you know, that was my style. I came in with a set of rules and here's what we're going to do in my classroom. I'm all prepared. And the kids just kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? You know, like they weren't used to that. They didn't need that. We just were able to kind of talk through things and they were really relational. And I missed that a lot. I would say empowered because Bangladesh is a very poor country and they realize that. They realize they have the ability to improve it. You know, yeah, it's just a different feel. And so I think that a lot of them felt empowered, even though I think there were fewer academic opportunities. Like I said, I think there's just the quality of education was just a little bit lower. And so their academic levels were a little bit lower as well. They just weren't as strong of students as, say, Indonesia. But just awesome kids to get to know and work with. And I had some of the best times teaching in Dhaka. So then I decided it was time to move again. I think I did 2 years there. I had a bad administration. Didn't like the principal at that time. And it just didn't match. Our styles didn't match. And so I decided it was time to leave. Yeah.
Like, it's the government mandating what you teach, or are you kind of on your own, or how, you know, because I mean, we argue about that now in the United States about government mandate.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
It's just, you know, I mean, education is a huge political thing in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So how about in those countries, were you kind of on your own? You taught what you thought, or were they mandating you had to get the kids to a certain level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of that was kind of not really it wasn't something I had to think about, you know. I didn't have to think about what if there was something that they wanted taught, then they would tell us, you know, the administration would tell us. I can't think of anything along those lines though. Like in certain countries though, they require the students to be in certain classes. So like in Indonesia, the government requires them to take an Indonesian studies class or Indonesian language class at different times in their education. So same in Kuwait, I think they were required to take Arabic or like a religious studies class that the government is mandating. So that was the extent of it in my experience, you know.
Cause I know my wife and a lot of my friends are teachers.
Mhm.
They're.
Yeah, and it wasn't that political when I left. I left 10 years ago and I didn't feel like it was a big deal, but now it's just crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to teach in America right now, you know? It's nuts. Yeah.
Doesn't, the American school at those locations, they dictate the curriculum, don't they? Was my experience. They basically said, this grade is this, that grade is that.
Yeah, they get to decide what they want to teach. Each school decides on their own what curriculum they want to use. Yeah.
Wasn't really any government schedule.
Yeah. No, it's pretty hands off in terms of that. Yeah. Sometimes they are. Sometimes there's like there's a network in China called Basis that has schools in different areas, different cities there. And sometimes, yeah, I don't know a lot of them though. I don't know. I don't like those schools. I don't know why. I just they usually just don't have a great reputation. I don't know why that is, but when it's a network, I don't know. Cambridge schools, I think, is one. I can't remember the others, but most of the time, no, they're independent. Yeah. So in Jakarta was quite a big step up for me. It was definitely higher academic levels from the students. Sorry, from the students, and it took some adjusting for me to get used to that. I was not ready for, you know, I guess every new country I went to, Bangladesh and then Indonesia, I felt like an imposter in those places. You know, you get that imposter syndrome of like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this level of teaching, this level of students, whatever it is. And that's good. I think everybody needs that, you know, to experience that rather than just staying comfortable in whatever you're doing, you know. So every place that I went, I felt that like I'm not ready for this. And this was probably the biggest step up for me. So in Jakarta, it was very multicultural. This is a school where if you worked at the embassy, you would definitely send your kids here. A lot of corporations. If you're working at Hyundai, you know, your parents are Korean. They work at Hyundai. They move to Jakarta to the office there to build cars there, and they send their kids to Jakarta Intercultural School. So this was like the primary school of the city, I would say, of the country. Really, really, really top quality school. And my parents visited and they can attest to that. I think the campus and the quality of everything, it was pretty incredible what those kids what kind of education they're exposed to from all levels, like best teachers, best curriculum, best resources. They just get the best of everything. They're really fortunate to have that. So much better than we're used to, than what I grew up in. It's just top quality. So like I said, they're high performing and there's a lot of pressure to perform, especially in Asia. I think we know that from just what we know about what we see in Asian culture is that there's a lot of pressure to perform, to meet the expectations of your parents and to not let people down, you know? And so there's Asian people can be very competitive in that way. And so they didn't really, sometimes, you know, if you joke around in class or, you know, they felt like you were wasting time. Like, no, give us a lesson, give us what we need to learn and then move on. You know, that's kind of the attitude a lot of them had. And then there were others that were on the other side of that. So it was like just a broad spectrum of, you know, like Singapore was a place that was like that. It was really, really strict in terms of like, we get the lesson done and we move on, you know. China can be kind of like that. Indonesia is kind of like a good balance. It's kind of relaxed in a lot of ways, but still high pressure, still has high standards, I would say. But what I experienced with these students is that they had fewer social emotional needs. So it felt like as a teacher, I wasn't like the relational side of it, I wasn't needed as much. They had a lot of these skills already from their families, and they came to school to learn the subjects and then, participate in activities and go home. There wasn't a lot of needs for, dealing with emotions, dealing with behavior, dealing with feelings. All that stuff is, we had programs for that stuff, but it wasn't, I felt kind of detached from the students sometimes, especially when I taught eighth grade. I started in eighth grade there, and that was a really tough adjustment. I moved down to sixth grade eventually, and it was a lot better, a lot easier for me to relate with the kids. But still, I never really got used to that. Yeah, I always kind of missed how relational kids were in Dhaka. And that's just my experience. That's, someone else might say the opposite, but so we talked about these a little bit. Let's see. Oh, okay. Who goes to international school? So I probably should have put this one earlier, but as I mentioned, children of expats. So like I said, if you work at the embassy, if you work at a corporation overseas, you could send your kids to an international school. But like we said, also children from the host country can attend. And then the benefits of this, you get a globalized curriculum. So you guys may have heard of AP classes or the IB curriculum. I took AP classes at the high school here, and a lot of schools in the US now offer the IB curriculum. It's a kind of a worldwide curriculum that all universities, I would say, recognize this. And if you graduate from a school that's an IB school, then it's a really good sign to a university that you're ready for that university. So a lot of parents want their kids going to schools just for these two things here, AP classes and IB classes. AP is mostly high school. IB is whole school, primary, middle school, high school program. So I taught Dhaka was an IB school, and yeah. Jakarta had IB and AP classes, so it was kind of covered everything. So globalized curriculum is one motivation for parents to send their students to these schools. English is another big reason, right? So all these schools are taught in English. You don't need to learn another language. You teach your classes the same way you would in America, anywhere else. Some schools are bilingual, which means that they have maybe half their classes in English, half their classes in Chinese or whatever it is. China has a lot of bilingual schools. So I never taught in one, but that's kind of like a balance between local schools and international schools. Obviously, the diverse environment and interacting with a diverse group of people and teachers and staff is a motivation as well. And like we said, just preparing for Western universities. These really rich families want their kids to go to school abroad. If they're learning in English and they're taking AP classes, IB classes, they're going to be sending them to the best universities in the world. So that's where these kids go. So that's what you're preparing them for, is to be the leaders of the world. It's a pretty important job in a lot of cases, I think. So yeah, it was a lot of responsibility in that. Mm-hmm.
What's your college? English?
Oh yeah. Yeah, everybody spoke English. Every teacher, it was only the local staff, like the maybe some of the cleaners, they might not know much English, but everybody else spoke English, yeah. Most of the teachers were Western, so US, Canada, but you also had people from everywhere else, like just a sample from everywhere else. In every school, I think, there are people from everywhere. Yeah. So we kind of already went over this as well. What did I teach? I was involved with 5th grade to 9th grade math and science primarily. I think I'm only licensed for 6th to 8th grade, but they kind of push the boundaries sometimes. You have a teaching certificate. It's good for these things. We can stretch it sometimes to match, other levels, other subjects. So I ended up teaching 5th grade and 9th grade. Not a big fan of either one, but I stuck mostly with 6th grade. That was kind of my sweet spot. This was my group. This is one class right here. So I had 13 kids in this class. So lower class sizes. I didn't mention that. The US, you're getting classes of 30. I had a class of 35 one year in North Carolina, and 10 years ago. And the biggest class I had, I think my 9th grade class was 30. That was tough. That was in Bangladesh. Every other class was 20, less than 25, I think. And then I got this one class of 13, so that's quite a joy to work with 13 kids. I think my smallest I think I may have had 7 one year in Kuwait in one class. A lot of high school classes end up like that, like they teach a specialty subject and then they get fewer students. Yeah.
Looking at and then thinking, how does a teacher address them? I'm sure their names are different. So
Yeah.
you struggle
I mean,
remembering and
yeah. Yeah, you should just have them write like a name tent, and put it on their desk for the first week or so. And I try to memorize the names quickly. But a lot of students would have like a Korean name, and then they'd have an English name that their parents would give them, or sometimes that they would choose. Their Korean name or Chinese name would be very difficult to pronounce. But then they'd have a name like I don't know, Scarlett or Nancy or something. Sometimes it's kind of like old-fashioned names. It was interesting. So yeah.
Something from a movie.
What's that?
Something from a movie.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Rate the education system in the US.
Depends on where. Like Indonesia, like if Indonesia is a 10, then the US, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe 5 or something. I don't know. It was a big difference, I think. But I don't, like I said, I haven't taught in the US in 10 years, so I don't really know.
So that's an expat school.
Yeah. That was just a great school. There were other schools that would be lower level than the US, I think. Yeah. But overall, the better schools in these cities are quite a bit better than US schools, I think. They're getting the best teachers in the world. The best teachers are attracted to these places. They want to be there. They want the salary. They want the experience. They want the student population. Oftentimes the location. I don't know. I think they say like you can choose like good salary, good location, good school. You can choose 2 of those. You can't ever have all 3. Something like that. So yeah, I taught the same standards that I would teach in the US. Common Core math, science standards were pretty much the same. And everything was in English, like we said. All right. Oh yeah, I mentioned this. Students in Bangladesh and Indonesia had their own laptops. So we use those in classes pretty much every day, almost every day. They would do research. They would, like for math, they had everything for the math class on their laptop, doing math problems there. They would put together Google Slides just like this. I'd have them do presentations with Google Slides, typing up Word documents. So yeah, we used the laptops a lot. And for science, a lot of these schools, Bangladesh and Indonesia as well, we had lab assistants. So they would be stationed in this supply room, bigger, oftentimes much bigger than this room. They'd be local workers responsible for preparing the labs for teachers. So if I wanted these supplies for this experiment that I want my class to do, they would prepare all the supplies, bring them to your room, set them up. All you have to do is just let them know in advance and then tear it all down and bring it back, put it away. So it was a lot less work. Yeah. That's a good question. Some schools would just not accept special needs students. There were some places, I think in each city, it seemed like there was one or two schools that were kind of known for accepting those students, and they'd have support for them, teacher support for them. A lot of these schools, you'd have to take a test to, and kind of have some interviews and things like that to be accepted into the school. And so they would kind of be able to tell from that. And if they could accommodate you, if you could keep up in the classes, that kind of thing. So, I would say that, yeah, I had some students with autism and Tourette's and learning disabilities, but it was never anything extreme with the places I was at. So, yeah.
If they have laptops and they're doing their education and learning laptops, what came to you? How did you grade and measure what they were learning? Was it still paper?
Some of it was, yeah. They use a mixture, yeah. Some of it they submitted on their laptop, and I gave them a lot of my grading was in Indonesia was based on feedback. So we only had 2 grades. We had mastering, you're mastering the standard, or you're approaching, you're not there yet. That was it. There's no A, B, C, D, F. It's some schools experiment with that kind of thing, So yeah, they would submit things on laptops, and I could give them feedback, type out feedback for them, what they could do better, what's good, what they could do next, that kind of thing. You had asked about translators. So the students that were lower level that had language needs, they could use Google Translate, and just, as you're talking, have their laptop up and be translating things in there. So that was helpful. Good tool. All right, then we get to language. I'll describe that picture in a second there. But like I mentioned, all classes were in English. If you're a teacher, you could get language classes upon request. A lot of schools would pay for language classes if you want to get involved with that. So I never took one. I don't know. I just never got that curious about language. I learned, like in Indonesia, I probably knew 150 words, enough to get me through the basics. Like the locals knew basic English in a lot of these places, so you didn't really need to learn the local language. In my experience, the people that learned the language had to really immerse themselves in the culture. They had to go out and find ways to practice it, because a lot of the people I interacted with were Western, they were expats. And if it was a local, it was just a small interaction usually. Getting, telling the taxi where to go, or paying for something, whatever it was, negotiating for a price on something, whatever it was. So I chose to never take a class, and I don't know, if I were to do it again, I might take a class, but I think at this point I would have forgotten most, like Indonesia, it's been almost a year and I've forgotten probably most of those words, so yeah, I didn't learn much of the language.
They were accepting of you speaking English,
Oh yeah,
trying to work with you.
oh yeah. And that's also the thing, is they wanted to practice their English. So a lot of them, they would respect if you tried to use their language, but they want to practice their English. They want people to speak English with, and get better with English. So almost every local was like that. They wanted to, they think English that's kind of the key to being overseas, getting out of your country is learn English, Yeah. And lots of Google Translate. So always had that up on my phone and was using that. And this was a case of using Google Translate here with this store clerk. This was a Alphamart here. This is like a 7-Eleven. And I was buying some items here, and she was typing something into her phone as we finished the transaction, and she asked, "Apakah kamu membutuhkan pukulan?" And she typed that into her phone, which translates to, "Do you need a spanking?" And I like, what? Spanking? Like, And somehow we figured out that she meant receipt by spanking. It was like, so I think I figured that somehow she figured out what I was talking about and was a little bit embarrassed, but yeah, there were lots of those kind of interactions where it's just like, you just never know. Oh, and then English. Yeah, my mom wanted me to show this because she saw this. I think she saw this picture somewhere. But this little poster here says, "Speak English." So we had to really work with the kids to convince them, not convince them, just to encourage them to use English, to practice English, rather than, in this case, this was in Kuwait, rather than Arabic. They would talk to their friends. Pretty much when they weren't talking with teachers, they would want to use Arabic because it was comfortable. So yeah, so that was a struggle. All right, so this was just a little tour that I gave on my phone. This is in Indonesia. This is kind of at the front of the school here. And I decided to put this in here. I wish it wasn't as shaky as it is, but that's what we're stuck with. So this is the campus of the school that I worked at. On the garden here, there were lots of different gardens. Just the landscaping in general was just incredible what they were able to do. These are just other classrooms, other conference rooms. There's this whole other stage right here. So they use this for performances once in a while. They had something set up here for, it looks like a strings performance or something. Cats all over the campus. The yellow tape you can see is for back from COVID. We used when we did our social distancing, right? So we had to set up everything in the campus for that. And then that's just the grounds. This is the high school area here, classrooms here, and then all this green space that the kids could use between classes. Lots of rain. You can see it's wet. So it's like the rainy season is October through, I don't know what it is, when we leave school. It's like the whole year pretty much, So it rained, yeah, usually between 1 and 3 p.m. You get a good rainstorm and then it would be done and you move on with your day. So this is probably the end of the day here. Just kind of moving through campus. So going from the high school, this is the library, I think, over here in front. Yep. High school library. And then over to the middle school area. This was a huge campus. It took me a long time to get used to where everything was. A lot of it is outside, as you can see. Tennis courts. This is weight room, gym. So that was the high school gym. Middle school had their own gym somewhere else. Nurse station, we had a few of those. There's a big track and field. Oops.
Did they have sports teams?
Oh yeah, everything. Yeah, I mean, you'd have some different sports too, like badminton. There'd be a season for badminton. Volleyball was popular. Basketball was popular. Soccer, football was popular. Track and field, cross country. This is just the cafeteria right there. I want to go back to that. Whoops. Oh, that was a mistake. The cafeteria had stations here for all these different cuisines. So you'd have like an Indian station, you'd have Indonesian, you'd have Korean. That was a big popular one with our kids. We had a lot of Korean kids. Yeah, it's like a food court where you just get whatever you want. And salad bar, sandwich station. They had a guy making crepes, with ice cream and fruit, smoothies. And then there was another level of that. Upstairs, there's a whole other level. Pizza, sushi. I had a lot of sushi. So someone making sushi all the time. It's like anything you would want,
Big question, did you pay?
Oh yeah, we paid, but it was pretty, it was affordable. Yep, reasonable. So that was a great part about lunch is you could always get something different. And my classroom was, I think I had the closest classroom to this cafeteria. I was right upstairs. So this is getting into my building. This was a building for math, science, and design tech. This is kind of the offices for the middle school. There's a theater. I don't know if I want, I guess I did go in the theater. Let's fast forward that a little bit.
As a teacher, how much interaction would you have with parents?
With parents, it would be if they wanted to call and discuss something or email and discuss something, they would. A lot of times I didn't get that though. You'd have your conferences, of course, twice a year or so, and see the parents, talk to the parents. And this was outdoor area where they go for recess. So they'd have and we had in Indonesia, we had breaks between classes. So they had like a 20-minute break between the morning classes, and then they have lunch after the next class, and then a 20-minute break after that third class. So kind of 4 classes a day. So it was really well balanced schedule overall. They had time to kind of relax a little bit, take a breather. So this is going up the stairs to the math level. The classroom's there, and then going up to the science level. So you can see really modern, really new. They were always updating buildings, always building new buildings, tearing buildings down. This is my classroom, or one of the classrooms here. So that's typical science classroom. You have the gas and water on the side, and you'd have a projector, just like a modern classroom here.
There's many trash receptacles. What was,
And this is my room here. So
were things recycled a lot or?
yeah, we had a recycling system for paper. Other countries, yeah, it was pretty. I don't know if they actually did it though. Like they wanted to keep this image of, we are a green campus, but it's tough in a lot of those places. Like recycling is just not a priority. Surviving is a priority. So a lot of people would burn their trash. It'd be burning plastic. That's a pollution. That was a big downside, was pollution. You were always breathing in crappy air. They were like Bangladesh. You'd have some days where you felt ill. You felt like dizzy, a little bit lightheaded because of the air quality. You're breathing in just all these factory fumes, exhaust. And maybe the weather would be like smog in California in the 70s, like that same image, that you have of California in the 70s, or whenever that was, 60s, 70s. I wasn't alive then, I don't know. But they just don't have regulations for it. So, yep. All right. You guys want a break? What do you want to do? We're an hour in. You want to do a stretch break or what? What do you guys usually do? I usually give my students a chance to stand up and stretch, and you guys don't do breaks here? No? Okay. All right, so that's just this is our. No, that's okay. I can keep going, but it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. Research says though. I don't know what research says. I think you're.
Escape, we might not.
That's true. That's true. Oh, I have some water here. I'll keep it green. Yeah. Yeah, this was our Friday assembly here. I love this picture here. We did this every Friday. We called it Bali Stage. Bali is you guys have probably heard of Bali. It's an island to the east of Java, where Jakarta was, and a big tourist destination. And so we had this Bali Stage here, and so we had kids presenting every Friday, and they'd have some kind of contest or game. So this was a ping pong table tennis contest that they did between. They had teachers and students competing against each other, and students were usually really good. They're good with paddle sports, really good with paddle sports. So tennis, badminton, table tennis. So this was a tournament we had. They had to do the finals in front of everybody, in front of the whole school. This is a group of local kids that came in. So they'd be speaking primarily Bengali, the local language. But we had a lot of these schools are very service oriented as well. So they wanted to get involved with the community, get the students involved with helping the community. And so we'd have kids coming in from different schools in the community doing things on campus. So you'd see kids all over the place all the time.
Talking about sports pride, I mean, do they compete with other schools?
Yeah, there's usually like a conference that you'd have, like Indonesia, we had like the top schools of the region. So like International School Bangkok, I can't remember what it was, Taiwan. But all these top schools, Shanghai American School, Singapore International School, kind of the top schools in these countries, big schools that would have teams, and we would travel to their country, they would travel to our country, and we do competitions. Yep. Yeah. And then there were some obviously local competitions that would happen as well with other schools in the region. But yeah, the big ones were in the conference with other countries. So, all right. So I guess that covers a lot of the school things. If you want to ask more questions about school, that's okay. We can do that. We can go back to that if you want to. This kind of covers my life, what it was like to live in these places. So, these were my 3 places of residence here. Kuwait, I walked in to this tiny little apartment here. I'm standing in the living room, looking at the kitchen. The bathroom is over here, bedroom's in here, and that's my only window in the apartment, is that one in the bedroom. So we called those apartments the caves. And it was okay. It was like, first apartment after moving overseas. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't mind it. I think I switched to one that had a window in the living room. Same size, but a window in the living room. So in Bangladesh, we had a much bigger place. It was like 2 bedrooms. I don't know how many square feet it was, but it was way more than I needed. So I had enough space to put all my music gear and have people over, and it was nice to have the space. And then in Indonesia, I started in a small apartment, but eventually moved to this house. It was a 3-story house with a garage in the basement. I had a maid's quarters in the basement. Like a maid could live there, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom for the maid if they want that. And then, full kitchen, full living room, dining room in the middle floor. And then I think it was 3 or 4 bedrooms that I had there. So like when my parents came, they had a bedroom to themselves, a bathroom to themselves. I had a pool in my backyard here. So it was just, yeah, you're kind of a little bit spoiled in a way, it's like, I don't know, like you didn't feel like you earned it, I mean, in a way you did, but it was a bit strange at times, a bit surreal, I could say, What's that?
Being your musical talent and whatever, did you at times kind of play and do something during your classroom to kind of?
Yeah, I the last few years I did. I had a guitar on the wall and would make up songs for the kids, and they liked that sometimes. They hated it sometimes, but yeah. Yeah. No, I would just play quiet music while they're working, something like that. So that's just my style, I guess. And then I mentioned the maid's quarters. So I think I was approached by someone, one of the first weeks of teaching in Kuwait. I think this woman was Sri Lankan, and she worked at the school doing, cleaning at the school. And then she would also work for teachers outside of that time, working in their apartments, in their houses. So I didn't know this was a thing at all, and was approached by this woman, and she said, I can work for you. I don't even know what it was per month. Like in Indonesia, I paid about $100 a month for someone to come in 5 days a week. I did not need 5 days a week of work, but it was just a normal thing. So Monday through Friday, there was someone coming in at like noon when I wasn't there, and they would, clean the dishes, make the bed, whatever it was that needed to be done, clean everything. They could cook for you if you wanted to. Like I'd have them cut up vegetables or something for a meal. that I wanted to cook later that day. And yeah, it was just it was a normal thing that a lot of people, it was kind of strange if you didn't have, they would call them helpers. So like a lot of families would have, like if you had 2 kids and you lived in a large house, which a lot of teachers did there, they would have a nanny to take care of their kids during the day, pick them up from school, whatever it was, help out with that kind of thing. A gardener to do the gardening stuff, and maybe like they call them a jaga, like a guard for their house. So there'd be gates in front of these houses, and there would be break-ins once in a while, but someone to watch the house when the family's gone, and they'd pay all these people a fair local salary, but in terms of our cost of living, a very low price to pay, you know. So we were treated really well. We were, you know, we had a lot of luxuries in that sense. I mentioned in my description for this drinking, someone said, "Aren't you going to be giving a presentation on the national beers of a country or something?" I was like, "What? Where did you see that?" Oh, I did put that in the description. So I said I had to make a slide on this. So in Kuwait, drinking was illegal. So we had to bring in our own supplies to make alcohol. This was one of the trips that I did to get some bottles. These bottles here were great for making wine because they sealed really well and they held a lot of pressure and they wouldn't burst. And so I had probably 40 of those or so. And then you would just go to the store and buy grape juice or apple juice or pomegranate juice or whatever juice you wanted to make wine out of. And we would just bring some wine yeast with us from home and put it in a big cooler with some sugar. And it was pretty easy to make. I would drink it now, you know, like I would drink it today. It wasn't bad stuff. As long as you were clean and you waited enough time, it was about a month for that to take place, then you could have some decent wine if you took your time with it. In Bangladesh, it was, I said, difficult. Like there were certain clubs, they call them. They were expat clubs. So like you'd have the Korean club, the British club, the American club, the international club, where you could go to these, they call them clubs, but they're like, I don't know, they might have a bar there, a restaurant, maybe a tennis court, a pool. So like places where you can kind of feel a little bit at home, you know, with people from your own country, German club, that kind of thing. And you might have people speaking your own language. I never joined one. I never spent the money on one, but like when we would play music, we'd go to these clubs and play at these places, and they would usually serve us alcohol. Like, you know, that was our reason for playing, was to get, you know, I mean, we wanted to play obviously, but it was like, it was a night out, you know, a Friday night. So that was the motivation. But we could buy from some of these clubs, we could buy, you know, crates of beer or like maybe a bottle of something. But you could also bring in stuff in your suitcase, and they wouldn't. I think it might have been like 2 bottles or something in Bangladesh. I can't remember what it was, and they wouldn't get you in trouble. In Indonesia, you could buy things there pretty easily. Beer was not as good. Like U.S. has great beer, but you could find most things there. And then in different countries, it seemed like everywhere you went, especially in Asia, there's like it seems like a national beer that they have. So like in Indonesia, it was bintang. In Laos, it was beer lao. In Thailand, there's these 3, Singaleo and Chang. This one, anyone recognize that Canada? It looks like what? Anyone know that? Anyone know that brand? This one, the blue one? It kind of looks like, I always thought it looked like Foster's. You guys know Foster's? It's an Australian. And so they kind of copied that look for this is in Bangladesh, you know. So that was their kind of their national beer. Pretty easy going. Estrella, that's from, I think that was Netherlands. So it was always kind of fun to see what the national beer was when you go to a new place. All right, getting involved as an expat. It was sometimes difficult to get your way into a expat scene, or get involved, get meeting people, especially someone like me as an introvert. It can take time. I think I I did arrive in Indonesia during the pandemic, and that made it a little bit more difficult. I got there the year before it started, so 2019. But it took me a good 2 to 2.5 years to feel like I had friends, that I knew people. Um, yeah, it can just take a long time to get adjusted. So a few of the things that I did to get involved were sports. During the pandemic, I learned how to play badminton. So this is one of the groups that I played with. It was pretty competitive. We had a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, and you get better very quickly. If anyone knows of a badminton group in Alpena that plays, let me know. Been looking for that. Softball, we had softball teams in Bangladesh and Indonesia. A lot of expats would play, but we had a lot of local teams as well. So there might be like a Japanese team that plays, Japanese expats that get together, and a lot of Indonesian teams in Indonesia. So it was a pretty big sport there to play slow pitch, blooper ball. I mentioned music. So music was a big hobby for me there. I was always involved in like a jam group. So like Kuwait, we would get together on Thursday afternoons. Thursday was our Friday. So the weekend in Kuwait is Friday, Saturday, instead of Saturday, Sunday. Same in Bangladesh, actually. And so we'd get together on Thursday, and just everyone would bring their homemade booze, and we get together and play music from 3 o'clock till whenever, midnight or whatever, whenever people wanted to stop. And so jam groups were always fun for me, but I always tried to join a band as well, and just had such a wide variety of musical experiences when I was overseas. So all these different genres that I was playing, country, folk, jazz, Motown, like all kinds of influences that I don't think I would have been exposed to, say if I was living in Alpena. You get exposed to certain genres in a certain area. But I just had I'm thankful for such a wide variety of experiences that I had. So like even this here, I was playing drums for our middle school strings band. The teacher knew that I played drums and asked if I would play for a concert. And so I did that a few times, just playing along with the whole band and being directed, and it was like just a really good experience, just something really different. So that was a big one for me. I mentioned the expat clubs, so places you go to drink and play sports, meet people. And then I also got involved a lot with motorcycles, mostly in Indonesia. I had 3 at one time there, and had a car in Indonesia. That was for transporting the drums, because I didn't want to call a taxi to carry my drums for me. So I bought a car and kept it in my garage, and it worked out. But I got into quite a bit of biking with people. We would ride bikes in the city, try to get out of the city if we could, and the motorcycle trips within the country. I did a lot of trips where I just say traveled to Thailand and then rent a motorcycle there for a week and just drive around for a week or 10 days or whatever it was. So
Obviously GPS, so you know how to get all.
yeah. You got your phone. You you just buy a SIM card in any of those countries, and you get, the cell service is so cheap. I mean, I've never traveled anywhere where it's been as crazy as the US. Like all you do is buy a SIM card, you put $10 on it, $20 maybe, and you've got plenty of data for like a month, pretty much. So I pay all my cell phone bills every month, and it would be a few dollars. Like that's it. So you just buy as much data as you need, as much calls, texts as you need, and it's as simple as could be. You don't need to do any billing with a Verizon or AT&T or anything. It's just pay with your phone, or pay a clerk at the convenience store. It was super easy. Always. Yeah, that's a good question. I should add a slide on that, but It's just never, yeah, I guess I just don't even really think about it. I always felt safe. I never felt uneasy, threatened, like there was nothing. I know bad things happen in these countries. Like there was a terrorist attack in Bangladesh maybe 7, 8 years before I got there, where expats were involved. Bali, there was a bombing in Bali in the early 2000s. Um, Kuwait, there were some mosques bombings, I think when I was there even, but a lot of those didn't involve expats, you know, is like kind of infighting in the country. But um, yeah, in general, yeah, I would say I felt very safe. Yeah, a lot of people think you're in Kuwait or the Middle East, you know, or in the middle of Asia and you should feel unsafe. But no, I would say I felt safer in those places than I would in any major US city, for sure. For sure. No question.
Obviously, well,
Yeah, a lot of the time, yeah.
they say, stay in pairs, don't venture. But I guess you.
As long as you're, yeah, when you're traveling and they tell you to, you know, it's a good idea. There's some people that just don't watch their stuff. They leave their purse hanging out or they're, you know, not watching I'm always watching those things. I'm always aware of that. I never had a problem with theft or anything like that or a crime or anything getting robbed or anything. Maybe it has to do with my height. I don't know. I think that's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, you probably had to be about the tallest one.
Yeah, that was I put that in there as a slide as well, just the attention that I got. But these are some of the places I traveled. I think it was something around 24 I counted countries in those 10 years. So I could have done a lot more. Like you can see like Thailand, like I probably did 10 or more trips there just because it was comfortable. The food was awesome, the people were great, super friendly people, great infrastructure, great roads, easy to get around, very cheap. And it was hard to have a better vacation to me, you know, than rent a motorcycle and go travel in Thailand. Sri Lanka, I did twice. Nepal, I did two long treks in Nepal. Switzerland, I did earlier on, and then my parents. Oh, my dad's leaving. My parents came to Switzerland as well. We did that this October, and we did Italy as well. So yeah, these are all photos I took and just incredible experiences. Jordan, that was probably one of my top three, was Jordan, going to Petra. And just the people in Jordan, just the hospitality, the scenery, just the feel of the place, you know, it just feels a certain way. And I guess I should mention that with the US too. I was thinking about that. Like when I would come back to the US, you know, every summer, it just felt there's a certain feeling you get when you come back to the US. I don't know, maybe if you guys have been in the military, some of you might have felt that, but that's my experience. Is like all these other places have great things going for them, and there's great things about life there. When you come back to the US, there's a certain, like a feeling of just, I don't know if it's home or if it's like just, there's a certain vibe you get from American people and their attitude. And it's a positive thing. I'm saying it's a good thing. So I don't know what that is, but I always felt it coming back into the US. It's less like, oh, okay, this is the US. That's the feeling you get. So it's hard to describe.
Healthcare.
What's that?
Healthcare.
Healthcare,
I needed it. I don't know.
yeah,
I needed it, but-
we had great insurance. So like if I had, like we were talking about sickness, you know, did I get sick overseas? Sometimes when I traveled, yeah, like India got really sick, Vietnam got really sick. But Indonesia, so I guess Kuwait, not a big deal. Bangladesh, surprisingly, didn't really get sick. Got to Indonesia, the first 6 months I was in the medical center there, you know, there, just go to the expat medical center probably 10 or more times for stomach bugs, you know, just like, yeah, it was a good 6 months of just constant sickness, you know. So they would take care of you there if you needed just basic stuff. If you needed to do something at the hospital, they had pretty good care there. I didn't really need a lot of that, thankfully. But like getting stitches, I would get the occasional stitches on something, you know, and you wouldn't pay anything, you know, it'd be very good care. So in general, if you're relatively healthy, then it's great. If you need major stuff done, a lot of people go to places like Singapore, to Bangkok. They'd have better hospitals there. Like I used to go to Singapore to see a certain physician there, and so yeah, there were like places that your insurance would cover, like in the region that you could go and get bigger stuff done. Like obviously Bangladesh did not have great healthcare, you know. It's Bangladesh, you know. It's a super poor country, so yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I was eating some of the local food, like the street food. It wasn't consistent. Like it was just kind of random, you know. It could be anything. Like it was the school paid for uh different restaurants to cater for different events that we had. So there was a Mexican restaurant that catered an event my first week of meetings. And it was great, you know, you get all the guacamole and you know, everything, you know, whatever. And there were a number of people that got sick after that. It was like the next day, and I was really sick, and I ended up going to the hospital, getting an IV and everything, and they found that the guacamole had something in it that a number of people had, and you know, and their stomachs were stronger. They had been there longer, you know, I hadn't, and so I wasn't used to it, you know. So you never know. You just never knew. So a lot of people, when they first traveled to, say, Indonesia, they would get sick, but after, like I said, 6 months or so, you'd kind of sweat it out and get tougher, and you know, yeah. And then I did have some family visit as well. That was always exciting when people would want to come and see me. So my brother Matthew and his wife came to see me in India. His wife is Indian. Um, Nepal, my cousin, came there. So that was one of the treks we did. Indonesia, my brother Eric and his wife came. Vietnam, that was earlier on. My brother Matthew came. Um, in Greece, that was the first place that my parents traveled outside the US. So that was a great trip. Then we just did Switzerland and Italy with Eric and Matthew and their wives. So they came back again, and my parents. So always good trips with the family. Oh, let's see. Oh, I gotta show you this one. Motorcycle in Jakarta. I guess I'll talk about first. So I don't know. I was really curious about the traffic structure. I'm kind of interested in driving and riding and things like that, and I've always liked that kind of thing. So uh, I really missed driving in Kuwait. In Bangladesh, I didn't have anything motorized, and I really missed it. I missed that sense of freedom and just adventure, getting out on your own. And so
What was public transportation?
public transportation, buses, taxis, like Kuwait, you're negotiating prices for taxis all the time. I never took a public bus in Indonesia just because I had motorcycles right away. You know, it's like you don't need it. There were also motorcycle taxis. You could just use an app on your phone, jump on the back of someone's motorcycle. They give you a helmet to put on, you know, and you go where you need to go. So a lot of people use that. But the basic rule is going with the flow. I mean, you've probably heard that before. The person ahead of you has the right of way, pretty much. So if they pull ahead of you, you're not going to honk at them. They have the right of way. They go first. And for the most part, drivers pay attention to motorcycles. So if you're riding a bike, you can rest assured that people are looking in their mirrors for you. They're paying attention to where you're at. As long as you're being smart, you're not making any sudden movements at all. So this is just kind of gives you an idea of what it was like. So people kind of passing, there's not really rules for that. You just kind of go when there's a space, which is great. You know, it's like, I would have a hard time riding here, I think, because of all the rules here. But lots of bikes. See, to me, I'm looking at this as like, oh, this is normal. This is like, this is every day. Lots of traffic, lots of just stop and go like this. There weren't a lot of traffic lights or stop signs. You just kind of figure that out at the intersection, like this one. A lot of people just walking and pushing carts and things like that. So you got to make your way around them. A lot of exhaust. So like after the pandemic, I saw a lot more people wearing masks. Like they got used to wearing them during the pandemic, and then they just kept them on for the air pollution. So that just kind of gives you a sample of what it's like there. I won't spend too much time on this, but I did do a lot of riding. So like I had a Vespa when I was in Indonesia. That was a lot of fun. A 2-stroke Vespa. Did some trips with some friends. These are local guys here that like to ride, and we did a beach ride one time. Just got to this beach down in southern Java, and the beach was open. You could go ride on it. So I said, okay, might as well. And never done that before, so that was fun. Glowing mushrooms, that was another trip I did. So if you wanted to leave the city, it was like a good hour of traffic, just solid. Like it's exhausting, you know. It's just like you saw in the video. It's just stop and go, just to get out of that metropolis, 32 million people, you know. And then you get into the jungle and kind of go. Gets a little bit easier to ride. So, oh, there's a couple countries. A lot of just rental bikes and finding paths like this of just getting out. You know, that was my kind of my favorite activity in other countries. Yeah, yeah, we rented bikes. So this is just a scooter that I had, like just an automatic, you know, and then this was like a 250. Usually 250 is about the highest you can get for those motorcycles. You didn't really need anything bigger. Like here you get 650s, 1000, 1250. You didn't need that size. There wasn't space. There weren't the roads for it, you know. So 150s, 250s is all you need. Food, I didn't put a lot of pictures. I could have found some more pictures of food, I think, but I kind of covered this. Overall, it was great. Like you're trying a lot of stuff all the time. I mentioned Kuwait having the best variety, best quality, like, and a lot of these places, all the places I lived, you could order food. So you'd have an app, just like it's kind of come to the US since then, but I don't know what the apps are, Uber Eats and things like that. I don't think we have them in Alpena, do we? But you could get food delivered in 20, 30 minutes to your apartment. You know, it was very fast, very, for the most part, pretty cheap, especially if you ordered local food. Like this was satay and soto. This was just an Indonesian food stall here. And you'd pay like, I can't see the prices here, but they're like, it might be $1 or $2 for this bowl, you know, something like that. And so meat skewers with like a peanut sauce, that was really good. Sambal mata here with like a spicy sambal is like a salsa or like a hot sauce. So they'd often have each region would have their own sambal. This was from Bali. Pork was kind of an issue. In Islam, you're not supposed to eat pork. It's unclean. So like Jakarta, you'd almost never see pork. You go to Bali where the primary religion is, I believe, Hindu, and it's all over the place. The next island over, you know. So you get this sambal matcha that was like garlic and onion and olive oil. It's like pretty simple with some lime, with some pork. So that was one of my favorite dishes. Thai curries, things like that were really awesome. Like you can try to make them and they're just never as good as when you get them overseas, you know.
And whatever, we went to Peru, we had some a person that knew about the food over there came and talked with us when we went on our mission.
Yeah.
Talk about guinea pig, you know, that's a favorite food over there in delicacy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I visioned in my mind, pork, pig, pork, pig. Well, guess what a guinea pig is? It's a rat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
You've seen that on
Yeah.
the plate. Not so much.
Not the right kind of pig, yeah. So yeah, Bangladesh was similar to Indian. It was a lot of the rice and meat. They call it biryani. I wasn't a huge fan of it. There was some interesting stuff there to eat, but a lot of these places I also ordered a lot of Western food. You know, I ate a lot of Western food. I cooked a lot of Western food. Indonesia, a lot of spicy meats with rice or noodles. So like nasi goreng is like fried rice with maybe some chicken. So a lot of fried rice, fried noodles, soups, Not a lot, like Indonesia didn't have a lot of like this kind of stuff, like curries and things like that. It was mostly, it was a little bit simpler, I think. Um, so it took me a while to get to find dishes in, say, in all these countries where it was like, these are my favorite things, you know, because I was trying a lot of stuff. But like Bangladesh, or sorry, Kuwait, I didn't put a picture, and I meant to find a picture, but those big pieces of flatbread with meat skewers, with you get like these green salads on the side with hummus, and there was like an eggplant dip that they used that it's like it makes my mouth water right now. Like it was just you go to the old market, they call it the old souk, and they would be all these restaurants lined up with these big, you know, everybody's eating the same thing, everybody's serving the same thing. It's these big, you know, big pieces of bread, flatbread, and these meats, and they're just grilled perfectly. It's awesome. So some of you guys asked about being tall and attracting attention. So I think being tall was, yeah, that's a big, that's, you know, that I'm a unicorn in the US in a lot of ways. So that's one reason I got a lot of attention, but also just looking different, being white, having white skin. That was for, say, people in Bangladesh, it was like they just don't see white people very often, especially if you go outside the city, outside Dhaka. It was like extremely local. Same in Indonesia. But this was a bike ride I did probably like 10 minutes away from my apartment, and found these guys all doing construction, and they wanted a picture with me. So there was a lot of that, like where you're just kind of surrounded. It's like, yeah, it's a very different experience. This is my supermarket in Dhaka. Like when I went to go check out, it was just like it was a little bit overwhelming. Like it was just kind of got tiring, you know, all the attention that you got, you know, like this guy, he's just laughing. This guy's just looking at me. Like I have keeping my wallet and my phone, you know, it's like if someone's going to steal something, that's a good chance to do it. So I like check for where my wallet's at, where my phone's at, you know, trying to be safe. And I just like that picture. Experience in COVID, I put this in there, but like it was all in all, it was pretty normal. Um, we we went home in March when everything started. We went online. I went back to Michigan, came back to Alpena, and I taught classes from my bedroom in Alpena, living with my parents, and went back the next year and taught online. So I was teaching from my apartment, sometimes from school. But we barely ever saw the kids that year in person. But it was pretty smooth. Like we used Zoom as I'm using now for all the classes, and it was all, you know, kids are at home, teachers at school or at their home, and that's how it went. So we returned with masks on that year. You can see the kids love to wear their masks right there. He's wearing on his eyes there. And yeah, that was kind of a challenge to keep the kids, have them keep their masks on. But overall, I think we all felt pretty fairly treated, and that the rules were respected. Like Indonesia, that we were required to wear masks on, you know, when we're out, and the locals did it. They didn't complain. I never heard there were no protests. There were no like doubting of the government or anything. It just people just did it, you know, and that was nice because I'm the same way. I'm the same way. So it's like you just did it. All right, so getting to some conclusions here. Oh, and by the way, there is a quiz. I didn't tell you that. Wendy gave me some homework last night, you know, to make a quiz. So you'll be tested after this. You will need a device for that, though. I don't know. You guys are. What's the name of this organization? What does it stand for? Lifelong learner. So you're still learners. So we'll still get you learning something here. You get to use some technology that the kids use. What I learned, kids are kids everywhere. That yeah, they all like there's the nature nurture thing. I think like I was thinking about that last night. Like they all have different needs based on where they're from and their experiences, but they're all just kids. You know, they're kids. They're kind of the same basic needs everywhere. So you're using a lot of the same techniques, the same strategies, the same relational strategies. You know, everywhere. And that there's no place that's perfect. That, like I said, like you can choose salary, location, school. You know, um, there's never any perfect combination, and so you're always kind of deciding, is this the right place or should I move on? You know, and then like you can see here, I think this is a clerk in Oman when I was visiting Oman, and just the smiles on people's faces. You know, you travel a little bit. Like if you've traveled at all outside the U.S., you see it just seems like the poorer the community, the poorer the country, the happier people are, the more smiles you see. You know, like they find ways to be happy. They just are content with very little, very, very little. So it's pretty eye-opening to see that, you know, just puts things into perspective a little bit. What I loved about overseas, I said the first thing was the eccentricity of the people. And I think I mean by this a lot of times the people I was working with, like in Dhaka, my teammate was, I meant to look this up, but his country it's Northeast South America. I can't remember the name of it. Guyana, that's what it is. He was Guyanese. And just totally different perspectives, totally different upbringing, you know, but we just meshed super well with what we wanted our kids to learn and be able to do. And so we just had a great partnership. People were at these schools for all different reasons. You know, it could be for saving money, it could be for experience, it could be for just doing something new, it could be maybe they're trying to escape the US because they're in trouble or something. They don't want to pay their taxes in the US, whatever it is. So you get people there that are there for all different reasons, and it was interesting. You know, it's like you're always meeting people, other expats that are just interesting people, and yeah, I miss that about it. That it was always exciting. It was always something new. And so I could put that as the second one. Everyday adventure and newness. You're always seeing stuff. Like you go on a walk, go on a ride. I don't know where I found this. It's like a rickshaw graveyard. Just some awesome pictures I got from that. But that was the three-wheel taxi that they use. So someone would ride in the front, you sit in the back, you pay them, you know, maybe 50 cents for a ride or something. And it's that kind of stuff where you just kind of like, you have to pinch yourself, you know, it's like, I'm not going to experience this my whole life. You know, it's kind of surreal. And the variety of experiences, in terms of teaching, in terms of personal growth, in terms of, I also mentioned musical growth. Like that's a big priority for me as well, getting involved with music. I'm just really thankful that, you know, looking back at all these pictures, thinking about the experiences I had as I made this presentation, you know, like I'm only showing you like a tiny fraction of what happened, what was there, you know. It's like there's just so much. Even though it doesn't feel like anything really, I was just living my life, you know, but it was really different, you know.
Well, relationships, I see that gentleman who you made terrific friends with.
Mhm.
Do you occasionally?
Oh yeah, we keep in contact. Sometimes I visited, we had a reunion in Costa Rica with all the guys that I played with in Kuwait. It was this group of older guys that played in a jam, and we got together to play in Costa Rica this past summer. So things like that. Yeah, I have a friend that moved back from Indonesia. He's French, moved from Indonesia to Washington, D.C. So I go see him. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it'll happen again, you know, like it's.
And I like to stimulate the friends that I made, because some of our mission trips were helping with their English, you know, and English was a second language.
Mhm.
So by phone with WhatsApp, you can, you know, send them a message, you know, as long as you
Yeah.
don't do it when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
they have to answer me in English.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
makes that practice there.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
I was putting here work-life balance that I think the US kind of has this attitude of, like just grinding it out all the time. Like, I mean, I think you guys' generation, for a lot of you, it might have been different. I don't know. But it feels like in America right now to make it, this is just my views right now that it's just a grind. It's like everyone expects you to be working all the time, and be busy all the time. That's not what it's like working there. It's a lot more relaxed. And once you're done with your work, you have your time, that you can do what you want with. And I don't know that's just something I noticed what I liked about working overseas. Some things I didn't like, restarting in each city. So you'd be somewhere, move somewhere new, leave everybody else behind. And it's like, you do see people and talk to people later on and keep in contact, but it's never the same as being in person. Like I'm particularly bad with that. Like once I leave somewhere, it's like it takes a lot of effort to stay in contact, and it's like, I don't know. I'd rather just put my energy into the people close to me, that I'm in contact with. That's just me, but so this was something really hard, was starting and making new friends everywhere. Restarting, kind of uprooting yourself. You never felt like you were, I think I put that. Yeah. You never felt like you're settled or that you're home somewhere. It always felt good, like going back to Indonesia, and I have my house, I have my, the people around me, my friends, good to see them, but it never really feels like home. It never feels like you're planted somewhere. So that's something I'm really missing right now, I think, is just feeling planted somewhere. I'd mentioned this, the constant debate of, do I stay? Do I leave? Everybody around you, every teacher around you is thinking that, like, what's my long-term plan here? Am I going to stay here, or am I going to move to this other country? It's your friends are always taking off. They're always leaving, So that was really hard. You'd meet someone and develop a great friendship, and then they would just decide it's time for another school, another location. So that was a challenge, was always deciding what's the next step. And then finally, complacency and getting comfortable. I think it was easy to get complacent. Like I felt that a lot in Indonesia, like everything is taken care of, like my life is kind of pretty, in a lot of ways, pretty straightforward and easy, and it's easy to just feel complacent and feel like you just want to be comfortable. You just want to stay comfortable, and like I said, you need to find ways to either where you're at to make yourself feel like an imposter, to really challenge yourself, or for a lot of teachers, that was moving somewhere new and doing something else, working somewhere new. So yeah, I got to a point in those 5 years where that's kind of how I felt, was just like, I need something else, but I wasn't excited to look for other schools. When I left those other schools, I was like, okay, what's the next step up? Where can I go from here? And found places. But with Jakarta, it was like, it was already a great school. It's a great place, and great things all I was experiencing all the time. But yeah, so it was tough to, I guess what I meant was like, I don't know. It was just tough to decide whether I wanted to keep doing that or just do something totally different. So I decided to take the year off. Didn't get another job. Decided to come back to Alpena. And I'm living with my parents now and deciding what I'm going to do this next school year. I think that was, what did I say? What's next? Music? No, I didn't have, I think I took that slide out. So I don't know. What happened to that. Basically, like, do I want to go back overseas and try that again? Do I want to start again, teaching in the US again? Which I'm kind of like, I don't know. And then do I want to start a new career in the US? And that's kind of what I'm debating with right now is like, also thinking about what are my values? What's my vision for my life? I've never really had a great vision, a great idea of what it is that I see myself doing, in 30 years, 40 years, It's just kind of like, this is a good route, overseas was a good route, is a good path. I made my way up. It's like, okay, where do I go from here? What's next? So that's kind of where I'm at this year. It's just deciding like, what do I want? What are my values? What's the best thing for me? Yeah, what do I want from my life? And it's been really difficult. It's been a hard year, but it's also been really positive. And think I'm just starting to figure some things out. So it's also been positive. This was a picture I took in Kuwait. We were doing a trip to the mall with the kids, and this was some local kid that just saw me and looks up at me. And I had time to pull out my phone, to go to my camera, and to take a picture while he was doing that. So I actually wrote a blog on what time I'm at the end of my time here. I wrote a blog my first year in Kuwait. I think it was pretty much the first whole year in Kuwait where I wrote about my detailed experiences. So I'm telling you from 10 years later what I remember from those times, right? My conclusions. But this is like from the day that I arrived, what was I thinking? What was, and it's really detailed. Like there's a ton of stuff in there. I just looked at it last night for the first time in probably 7 years, something like that. I just remember that I had it. And if you, yeah, go ahead and read it. I mean, it's a lot of my family followed that the first year or so, and they were upset when I didn't keep it up because it was super, super detailed. Yeah.
Our government system is so different than the thing.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it was very different experiences for you back then and for them back then as well. Yeah. Oh, you guys ready for your quiz? So we're going to use a website here that that I use with my students. It's called Kahoot. You can go tell I'm sorry to say your grandkids probably that you use Kahoot. Maybe if this works, we'll see. But we have a few questions here, and Wendy has some prizes that may be involved for the winners of this. So what you're going to do is, you guys want to try this?
Sure.
You gotta be able to sign in and use technology if you wanna win a prize here. Yep. So you just use your phone. Yep. Just go to kahoot.it. That's live. You would do join, and you can make it'll give you a code here. Starts. So if you're online, you can do this as well. So if you take out your phone and go to your web browser and you type in kahoot.it, there it is. And then the PIN, just enter in those numbers. This is what the students all do. They take out their laptops, their phones, whatever. 494. So I use this for usually just review, like you have a quiz. It's just in the review, kind of a fun way to get kids involved in competing. They always like a good Kahoot. Make sure that you use an appropriate username because everyone is going to see your username. It was always a bad idea to use these in front of the whole school because you get you can never identify whose username it is, And so you could put anything you wanted.
Those four are in this room right now.
Yep. Or they could be online, I guess. Anyone else? Anyone else trying to join? Together, your team. Okay. All right, we'll give it a shot. Worldly quiz. the questions get more difficult as we go. True or false? You need to be able to speak languages other than English to teach overseas. Don't give away the answer. Well, we're still waiting for somebody. Answer is false, obviously. Tom is in the lead. Tom, you answered the quickest, I'm guessing. So the quicker you answer, the more points you get. Yeah. Yeah. This country has the world's most valuable currency and desalinates. Thank you guys for coming. Desalinates almost 100% of its water. Which of those? This is the countries I was in: Kuwait, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and a random answer, India. So Kuwait, yes, they don't have any natural water sources, so they desalinate from the ocean. And I think one Kuwaiti dinar is like $3.50. Tom's still in the lead. Chickadee close behind, and Rick Smiley, gotta get going there. Operation Desert Storm resulted in the liberation of Kuwait. In what year did it take place? Oh, come on, you guys know this. So you could still go into the desert and see there to be like bombed out tanks. I never actually went. I wish I would have, but I guess it was 1990. I think it took 100 hours to they said to dislodge the Iraqi forces. But I believe our school there was the only school that stayed open. They said during that time, they had armed guards at the school, and they stayed open for classes when that happened. So there were a lot of people at the school still that remember that time. They remember what happened then. So it was pretty interesting to hear their stories. Chickadee takes the lead. Oh, Tom. Rick in second. Kuwait consists of a major city, Kuwait City, and its surrounding territory. What is the term for this? Singapore is also another example of this. Is it a republic, a city-state, a state, or a kingdom? That's a tough one. Oh, wow, you guys got it. Oh my gosh. City-state is correct. I had a band in Kuwait that was named City State. So yeah, that was fun. Chickadee, still in the lead. Which city has the highest population density? So we went over this at the beginning. Dhaka, Jakarta, Alpina, or Kuwait City? It is Dhaka, by quite a bit. Chickadee keeps the lead, followed by Rick. Known as the land of rivers and containing the world's largest mangrove forest, which you see in the picture here. There it is, the mangrove trees growing in the water. And it also has a lot of rivers. Which of those countries? Oh, wait, Alpina. Not Alpina. Indonesia is it. Yeah, we did. The kids learned a lot about mangroves in Indonesia. Visit a lot of mangrove forests, that kind of thing. So learn about the ecology of those systems. This is the flag of which country? You did see this flag today in one of the videos. It's very close to the Mebane flag. Maybe the landscape should help. That is Indonesia, red and white. So they had like, yeah, each of those colors symbolized something. I think it was like Kuwait or Bangladesh had red, green. It was like red was blood, I think. Green, like the land. So there's a lot of fights for liberation, that kind of thing. A lot of history in these countries, obviously. Rick is dominating here. Indonesia is known as the world's largest archipelago, composed of over how many thousand or how many islands? I'm going to say no one's going to get this right. Oh my, Nope, one person got it. 17,000 islands. And I think it's over 900 languages, I want to say, in those islands. So dialects, someone from Jakarta would have trouble understanding someone from Bali, you know, because of their dialect.
That's like us northerners and people down south.
Similar, but oh, is that it? Third place, Tom gets a prize. Yeah. Chickadee gets the prize. And Rick, the number one, gets all the chocolate. Rick, Tom, and Chickadee. Who's Rick? Oh, he's the one paying the most attention. Tom and Chickadee. Who's Chickadee? Yeah, okay. Well done.
Former teacher, Brian. So
Oh, Smiley. We gotta get Smiley ones. Who's Smiley? Just for using technology. Who's Smiley? Are you Smiley? Is Smiley online? Maybe. We don't know. We don't know who Smiley is. All right. Well, that's pretty much what I had. I mean, that's I don't know if you guys. Thank you.